Hey guys, my name is Caleb Bridges and I'm the Residence Director for Pembroke Hall this year. And today's devotional topic is going to be responding to our convictions. I think we've probably all been in a situation where we felt like the Lord was convicting us of something. Either we said something, we did something, or maybe we're just convicted about something in our past. And I think the question I want to ask is, what do we do when we have that conviction? How do we respond to it? Do we do anything about it, or do we ignore it until it finally goes away? And does it actually go away? Or is it that our hearts just become so hard that we're not seeing it or sensing it anymore? So that's what I want to talk about, and I want to start by reading an example from Acts, and it's going to come from chapter 2, and it's verses 36 and 37. And basically, to give you the backdrop of this, is Peter is talking to the Israelites, and he's talking about the fact that the Israelites have persecuted Christ and they've crucified the Messiah. And so here's the verse. It says, "Therefore let all Israel be assured of this. God has made this Jesus, whom you crucified, both Lord and Messiah." Now, when they heard this, they were pierced to the heart and said to Peter and the rest of the apostles, "Brethren, what shall we do?" I think the interesting thing about this is that their response, they were pierced to their heart. They were convicted that they had done this wrong. And they asked, what should we do? Now, I think for most of us, it's not so much that question of what should I do. I think for most of us, we know what we should do. We're convicted of something and we probably know, oh, I need to do the opposite, or I need to not do this thing. But there's that struggle that we really just don't want to change. Have you ever noticed that the people who typically feel slightly convicted about something tend to want to surround themselves with other people who are doing that thing? I think we all do this because we almost feel like if I'm around other people who are doing the same thing or struggling with the same thing, that maybe there's nothing wrong with it. And so we can feel a little bit better about ourselves by being around other people who are. And obviously this is not the answer. I think there's really two main things that keeps us or prevents us from responding to convictions. The first one I think is laziness or a lack of discipline. I think a lot of us are convicted of something and we know we need to change, but change is hard. It's difficult giving stuff up. It's difficult changing something, especially if it's something that we like or love. I think the second thing that makes it difficult for us to respond to the convictions God gives us is our own pride. I mean, I think many times we like to think we're really good people. And the idea that I'm not this great person that I thought I was, and conviction kind of hits me, it's hard for me to face that. And I think many times we'd almost just choose to ignore it rather than have to deal with the fact that maybe I'm not such a great person. You know, I think what goes along with that, and I want to kind of give you an illustration to try to help you understand maybe this role of conviction and how God uses it. And so for this illustration, I want you to imagine a blade, and it's in a circular fashion. So just think of like a triangle type blade, okay? And imagine that it has 3 super sharp edges on it, all right? So it's making a triangle. That wasn't really a triangle, but you know what I'm talking about. And let's say that God took this blade that was like a triangle, and let's say he pushed it into our hearts, okay? And that was conviction, and when he turned it, it just tore us up. And imagine that is God's conviction. That's him showing us that something's wrong in our life. We feel it, it hurts, we know it's wrong. But let's say we fail to respond to it. We choose to ignore that conviction. We say, oh no, there's nothing wrong. Well, what happens is that God's turning it, and when we fail to respond to that conviction, it's rubbing the edges off of it. In other words, it's taking the sharpness away. It's dulling it on the edges. And let's say God continues, and maybe he tries to convict us of something else, and we ignore it again. And he keeps turning that blade within our hearts to convict us. But eventually, we keep wearing it away by denying those convictions to the point that it's just spinning in our heart. It's worn off all the edges and it's turned into just this circle instead of this triangle of blades. And so it's turning within us. God is still trying to convict us, but I'm not feeling it anymore. I think that's a scary place to get. And I think sometimes we can get there because we've chosen to ignore the convictions God's given us so many times that now we're not even feeling the convictions. It's not that God isn't still trying to convict us, but it's that we've chosen to almost block him out. And I think many of us do this. You know, I think it's almost ironic how some of the nastiest, meanest people are sometimes the people who think that they're the best, right? Have you ever met people like that? They think that they're just totally fine. And I think part of the reason of that is that they've been blinded by their own sin. You know, I think a good example of this is like a mirror that we look into, right? And I've got an example and I want to show it to you real quick. So I have this little hand mirror, right? I don't know if you can see, but I've kind of clouded it out a little bit. And I think this is an example of what sin does in our life. Sin clouds our reflection of ourselves. So I can look at myself in the reflection of this mirror I have right here, but I'm not going to see myself very well because the sin in my life has clouded the reflection. So if I looked at myself, I might think, oh, I'm fine, I look fine. But the reality is, the reason I think I look okay is because I can't really truly see myself. But what happens when we do respond to the convictions God puts in our hearts? Well, what I think really happens is I think when we respond to them, we start to kind of clean away at that mirror a little bit. It may not be perfect, but let's say I'm able to kind of start seeing. You see how I've kind of worn away a little bit of that. So let's say that's just me responding to a conviction. Well, I can see myself a little bit better now, right? And when I can see myself better, I can start to see what's wrong with me. I can start to see the sin that's within me and the things that need to change. Now, if I fail to respond, then I'm just going to keep clouding this up even more. However, the more I respond and the more I deny those desires to just ignore it, I'm going to finally clear away that mirror so much that you're really able to start seeing a good reflection of yourself. And I think when we can see ourselves, when we can see what needs to change, we can start to make those changes. So I hope that example, I know it wasn't the best, but I hope it kind of helps you understand that whenever I'm sinning, I'm probably thinking I'm in a pretty good place, but the more I fight against it, the more I'm able to see what I truly am and what truly needs to change in my life. So I hope this video has been encouraging to you. Please stay tuned for more devotional videos in the days to come. Thanks for watching, guys.